I mean, I'm not disputing. I imagine Jesus existed, this man, and these people recorded the events that happened. I imagine that happened. I'm not disputing that. Just that it's probably, things have been probably slightly altered over time.
Jesus Christ is unique in history. Absolutely unique. There is nothing that came before him. Nothing.
What about Dionysus, the god of alcohol, who had 12
The Greek god of wine. What was his name in Egypt? All the gods, all the so-called gods from Assyria and Sumeria and Babylon and Egypt and they all have the same personas, but they've changed their names. You're saying that every man should think for themselves, every man should have their own spirituality,
yes.
Every man should basically be, and I'm saying to you, if we don't have a precedent where we've all come as one, we're all having peace as a result of that, then what makes you think that we
want to discover. I want to understand. But if you don't want to talk, it's cool. I'm looking for conversation. So what's your standpoint?
I'm a Christian.
Can you tell me about it? Why?
So Jesus Christ is a historical FYI. We have testimony both within and without the Bible. We know that this person made certain claims and he did certain things. And historically they have been attested to. We have eyewitness testimony, as well as we have outside of the witness testimony. We have the history, we have the historicity of the Bible, we have church fathers, we have Tacitus, Justin Martyr, we have all these, we have so much evidence for our manuscripts. Right? Our manuscripts, we have over 5,000 Greek manuscripts, another 35,000 Latin manuscripts. We have Georgian, Armenian, we have North Africa. We have more history for the person of Jesus Christ than we do for Julius Caesar, Hannibal, Plato, Aristotle, or anybody in antiquity.
Okay, interesting. Well, what about if I say that you're saying the number of scriptures and things written about this man or this time period, but I'm pretty sure that in other parts of the world they have many scriptures written about their famous historical figures, such as in Vietnam or in China, or maybe in India with the Hindus. You know, they have a lot of information about what happened then.
The Christian,
you know what I mean? So then the number of information for me doesn't constitute truth.
But you believe in Plato?
I've heard that Plato existed.
You believe in Aristotle?
I don't know about the word belief. It's the wrong word. Like, I don't believe
you accept that there was a person called Aristotle?
I've heard that there was, and I've read his writing, yeah.
Was John F. Kennedy, was he assassinated?
I've seen a video of it, it looks like it.
Was Abraham Lincoln, was he shot?
I don't know where you're going with this, so you might get
because
the point.
What I'm trying to say is, the way history works, right, is usually we have something called speculative history. So for instance, yesterday's history, but we can only speculate exactly what certain things are. And so when we look at ancient figures in antiquity, read, for instance, like Shakespeare or Aristotle, Plato, the books that we have regarding these persons are approximately 400 years after they lived, 500 years, 1,000 plus after they lived. But with Jesus Christ, it's totally opposite, because we have from the first century, from the time he lived in, we have works, we have books, we have the ahistorical canon. And so history is very important. It's very important. You cannot go forward until you understand what history is. Right? You can't base your future on something abstract. It needs to be based on something that's happened already. Right?
Are there different interpretations of history though?
Well, no, I don't believe they are.
No. Well, surely there must be, because as the history has been recorded, it'll be recorded by different men and women, right? And those men and women have got different ideas or preconceptions or things that they might put emphasis on.
Yeah.
So therefore that gets passed down.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not disputing. I imagine Jesus existed, this man, and these people recorded the events that happened. I imagine that happened.
Right.
I'm not disputing that. Just that it's probably, things have been probably slightly altered over time. As you go further back, things tend to change.
Well,
the story gets twisted.
This is the marvelous fact about the Bible, that we can rewrite the whole Bible by just using the letters of the church fathers.
Right.
So the church fathers, they existed between the patristic age, right, and the first century.
Right.
I mean the 4th century. And these guys, they were writing to one another, and every time they wrote, they would write verses out from the Bible. And so now we can basically do the whole Bible just using it.
From that. Okay.
Now we're talking about 2,000 years old. So we can go back to the first church fathers. We're looking at from Justin Martyr. We're looking at people like all the way to the 4th century, like Tertullian, and we can reconstruct the whole Old and New Testament just using their works.
Interesting. Good. I got another question for you.
Sure.
Thank you. A personal one though, so if you don't want to answer it, doesn't matter. I mean, don't answer it. But because we're talking about belief and faith, have you always been a Christian?
No.
What happened to make you come to Christianity?
Okay, so genuine Christians, they have the way. First of all, they don't choose to believe in God. If you are genuinely a Christian, you don't choose to believe in God. Because I used to be boxing, a DJ, and doing everything that most people do in life.
Right.
And then I have an experience. The experience is now a catalyst for me to begin to read about this book called the Bible.
Right.
That now becomes that determines, okay, that clarifies, that gives me the kind of like method of that explains the experience I have. If you don't have the experience, there's no way you can begin to say, okay, I'm going to believe in God.
Right, so you need a spiritual experience.
Correct.
That's interesting. I've not heard many people talk about that. Very interesting.
You can choose to say, oh, no, I'm going to be a believer. But somebody can come around and can dissuade you by using intellectual. So for instance, if I take you to the Grand Canyon and you see it and experience it, nobody can convince you when I bring you back that it doesn't exist. It's your experience.
Right.
And in the same way, the way God begins every Christian, every spiritual Christian's journey is that they have an experience, and that experience is like, wow, what is this? That now begins the journey.
Got another question. Sure. Very interesting. I don't want to interrupt you. Just like I want to keep it moving. So this is more about opinion. Because of what you said there, I find it very interesting about spiritual experiences. I've had spiritual experiences of my own. Do you think you should teach children about religion? Should you educate your children to be Christians as they have had no spiritual experiences themselves? You know what I mean?
Well, let me clarify something. Children, for instance, do not necessarily know spiritual things, but they are aware of moral things. They are aware of right and wrong. Well, yes and no.
But you don't need to teach them religion for them to know that.
Well, the problem, absolutely, you're absolutely right in that. But the thing is, it's like children, it's all about their person, right? Their person is being developed. So from a time of childhood, they are learning the distinction between right and wrong, what's good and bad.
Yep.
Should they steal? Should they lie? And if you bring your child up in this way, it's more than likely that they can acknowledge that there is a God who gives them the commandments, right? Don't lie, don't steal. So I know many young people, young children, and the first thing they say is like, who taught us this? Who taught us how to be this? Why should we do this?
Right.
But gradually, when they begin to acclimatize to this experience themselves, not doing bad and evil, then it becomes accepting that, yeah, there is a God. There is a God. They themselves are brought into the experience by them choosing. I won't lie. I won't disobey my parents.
Okay.
I will try and conduct myself in a way. So yeah, it happens in both ways.
But do you believe it's possible for a child to be educated in morality without the mention of God? Because for me it was the case.
Yes.
And for others I imagine it's the case.
Oh yes.
Alright, so it's not connected. For me that those two are not connected. Like having a conception of morality and a belief in God are definitely not connected.
I mean most people who don't believe in God, they bring their children up to say, don't lie, don't steal.
Right.
Be nice, be gentle.
Because it's social, it's what we need to be socially accepted.
Culturally speaking, socially accepted, for us to be acceptable with one another, to formulate respect and build respect to other people.
Okay.
You don't need religion. You don't need it. But I have to clarify something. I am not religion. I don't have a religion.
Right.
I'm a Christian. And the Christians, like, you don't have a religion with your mum and dad. You have a relationship. And in the same way, the person of Jesus Christ, he is not a historical entity, a martyr from history. We don't believe in the historical Jesus. We believe in the living Christ, the Christ of today. So he's still alive.
The man never existed.
Oh yes, he existed, but he's still living.
Okay.
Right.
The conception of the idea, the energy of it.
No, the person, the spirituality of it.
Okay.
Right? So he is actually, so the Bible makes it very clear that he's eternal, that he's ever living, that he has no beginning and he has no ending. But there's no point in time when he begins to have an existence. No, the Bible makes it very clear that he is the Word who was in the beginning was with God, and the Word who is God. And that this Word continues today, right now.
Okay. I got a question. So from your position, or from the Christian position, maybe it's a difficult question to ask. What are humans? What are we? What is our essence? What is our purpose? I know it's a very deep question.
So the Bible makes it very clear that human beings are made in his image and likeness. The way a glove is made in the image of a hand, right? Now what do you do with a glove and a hand? The hand gets into the glove. So the purpose that God, when God makes man, he makes man with the intention that he would be his content, and that man would now be his expression.
But do we not have godliness within ourselves?
Well, yes, to a certain extent you do. You have kindness, you have hope, you have a certain amount of love. But all of these things are shadows of the real thing. That's why you can hate. That's why you can feel rebellious, right? One minute you can be kind and gentle and nice. The other time you can be full of wrath and hate and anger, right? Because the Bible makes it very clear that man has fallen from a particular condition, a particular state. That's why you can feel these things. And these, I should make it very clear. Human beings right now are not the human beings that God made. Right?
No? Why not?
Because you have something in your nature that is called sin. And that sin, right? That because of sin in you, you now consider God to be an enemy. According to Colossians. You really say, I don't even believe in God. Because of the sin in you, right?
I think that's a bit of a jump, because I mean
I only go by what the scriptures say.
But okay. I don't want to offend you, but
no, offend away.
Definitely not. It's not my purpose in the part at all. I want to find out what you think. What I mean is, I would say maybe it's more valuable to think for yourself, though. You know, you say that's what the scriptures say. I understand following a belief system, but thinking for yourself maybe is more valuable.
Well, we've had thousands of years of people thinking for themselves. We have all kinds of philosophies. We have all kinds of scholarly teaching. We have Confucius. We have people like Kierkegaard and Heidegger, existentialists. So thinking for yourself, and yet here we are. So this is where we are, thinking for ourselves.
I know, but I just mean, I know I think I know where you're going with that, but I'm not sure it's the strongest argument, because in large parts of history, in large parts of Europe, I imagine, were heavily religious, heavily Christian, and I don't think those times were that great either. You know? No. You don't agree?
No.
You don't agree? Okay, well, imagine there were times of complete ignorance, religious persecution, murdering people that questioned the church, and burning witches. That's not a great time.
So it's very easy to basically use particular incidents and particular environments in some of our history and say you're going to frame the Christian based on that.
Not Christian, just a conception of following a religious dogma and saying that everything was better back then. It's like rose tinted, you know what I mean? I can't agree. You had the plague, you had terrible things happening, and the Crusades, and many wars. It seems to me just the same as today. More shouting, yes.
But again, if you look at things, I mean, this is what I'm not saying I don't believe in religion, because if I believe in religion, I have to accept Catholicism and the paedophilia.
Right.
If I'm a religious man, I have to believe in what's happening in Ireland between Protestant and Catholic.
Right.
If I'm a religious, I have to look at the Church of England, the split between the Church of England based upon homosexuality.
Right.
But this is why I say to you, I'm a Christian because of the person of Jesus Christ. And that person, you cannot conflate the two persons and religion, the Christian religion today. Because the Christian religion today, there's a lot of doctrines, there's a lot of culture, and there's a lot of practices which are nothing to do with this, but they are more historical and they're more tradition, right? They're part of the European or African or South American tradition, which is now part and parcel of their Christian life.
Right.
But it has nothing to do with the scriptures themselves.
Okay, so you let me see if I get you right. Is you don't associate yourself with any other religion, any other Christian dogma, or you have a personal belief, and you're not associated with a church or anything?
I belong to a church, yes.
Oh, okay, but does that not have something else combined with it, like an extra part of culture, different types of traditions? Because you're talking about there's different types of Christian, I imagine.
So there are denominations.
Right, that's the word I'm looking for.
And each denomination emphasizes things based upon what? Doctrines, based upon practices, based upon, so for instance, you have some churches that believe in baptism by immersion. Some say no, just sprinkling. And then if the two disagree, they say, right, we're going our own way, and I'm going to form my own. You've heard of something called a Reformation, right? Martin Luther, right? When he came and when he nailed his 99 pieces on the walls of, I think, Gutenberg, right?
Okay.
We know about Calvinism, all of Count Zinzendorf, Zwingli. So many denominations, the Coptic Church, the Orthodox.
Does this have anything to do with Jesus and the belief in God? Or is it
Well,
just
no,
culture that's been created around
exactly.
it?
Well, this is the problem, because a lot of these denominations, right, they are existing based upon division, on doctrinal division.
Right.
They are based upon cultural differences, right? So it's not based upon what the book says itself, but it's based upon my personal, I can't get along with you because you don't believe in this. I can't be with you because you disagree with that.
Yeah.
So eventually there's a division and a split. That becomes now a denomination. But essentially speaking, if you ask all denominations, Christian denominations, if you believe that Jesus Christ died on the cross, yes. Was he resurrected? Yes. Is he the Son of God? Yes. Did he die on behalf of our sins? Yes.
Right.
So the basic elements, the aspects that are necessary, the pillars, yes, they all believe. But in terms of all the details, right, that's where you usually find that there's a distinction, a separation.
So it seems to me that those separations usually, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but they usually result in conflict. Even though people, like you said, maybe have the same core belief of Jesus, Son of God, etc. But these extra stuff seem to get in the way of connecting.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
so you can look at Ireland and England,
the
Anglican, Protestant and Catholic.
Okay, so another question. You were talking about the state of the world today. What do you think would be an improvement to that if everybody became Christian?
Okay, well, can I turn that back on you?
Sure.
What do you think is what's your utopia? What do you classify as utopia?
Well, I can't give a utopia because, I think it's a false concept. Like, I would say that humans should strive towards improving the world in many aspects as they can before they die. That's what I would like to say, to build it for the future, to try and improve it, leave it better than when you came. And there's many things that are going to be subjective about that. What is better? That's the issue. But I can't say that it would be everybody having the same idea. Maybe it's similar. You could draw an analogy to nature. Species are only strong if they have genetic diversity, right? Well, it's part of evolution. If you have a lot of different genes mixing from different groups, when something changes in the environment, they're much more able to survive. Now, maybe it's the same with ideas. You need to have a mixing of ideas and belief systems in order for people to be able to progress. I don't know.
Do you have a precedent for this? Is there a particular? Can you look back in man's civilization and man's history, and you can set yourself and say, aha, they sort of had it?
No, because every society has its flaws.
Right. So there's no precedent for this thing you're looking for.
No, I was just saying that I was giving the idea that maybe having a pluralistic ideas are more beneficial than it's just this.
But what I'm simply saying is that human beings, we have shown that in the last round figure 10,000 years we've been here, maybe probably longer, but we have no precedent for this. There's never been a unique time in history where we've all, a eureka moment where we've all said, right, that's it, we're all going the right way now.
I agree.
We're all on the same page.
Yeah.
But the person of Jesus Christ, the things that he says, right, no man has ever uttered these words. No man.
Well, I mean, maybe
there's something along their minds.
No man. So, for instance,
like
I
what?
used to. Okay, have you ever heard of something called zeitgeist?
I know the word. It's like the feeling of the time, the energy of the era.
So there was a movie called Zeitgeist in the 90s, right? In the early 2000s.
Oh no, that I've seen it.
And it had 3 parts.
Oh, you meant the meaning of the word,
right?
Yeah.
The first part had to do with banking.
Yeah.
That we were all being swindled, that there was a secret, right?
Right.
The second part had to do with governments. That actually behind the governments there's a deep
Secret
state.
societies.
Right, secret societies.
Yeah.
The Bilderberg and okay. The last one happens to do with the person of Jesus Christ. And what Zeitgeist said that Jesus Christ, that before Christ came in his incarnation, that there was a myth if you look at different the Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian, Indian, you can find this person repeated in different myths, in Egyptian and Babylonian myths. Nonsense. Because Zeitgeist never thought that people would go out and do their research based upon the end credits of the movie. So the Zeitgeist did these end credits and said, this is what we're studying based upon this. Some people, scholars, went out there and did the study. And they began to look at all the books that Zeitgeist was given, and they found it was all nonsense. Number one. Number two, there is no pre-mythical figures that have the same history of Jesus Christ, that acted in the way Jesus Christ did, that spoke like Jesus Christ. There is nothing like this.
100%.
What you will find is people who have built up these myths, and they will say, oh, go look at that wall. Oh, take this manuscript down, right? So if you look at the Gilgamesh epics, you look at Enki and Enlil, you look at the Babylonian, right, some of the things in the Talmud, and I'm simply saying all of these things, when you look at them, nothing.
You're saying they're not similar at all?
Jesus Christ is unique in history, absolutely unique. There is nothing that came before him. Nothing.
What about Dionysus, the god of alcohol, who had 12?
The Greek god of wine.
Wait, okay.
What was his name in Egypt?
Who had 12?
What was his name in Egypt?
I don't know his name.
Okay.
Well, did he exist as well?
All the gods, all the so-called gods from Assyria and Sumeria and Babylon and Egypt and they
No similarities.
They all have the same personas, but they've changed their names. Yeah. So, for instance, Osiris or Semiramis becomes Isis. Tammuz, right? Tammuz, he now becomes what? Ashtaroth, and later on, which we get the word Easter from. Ashtaroth, Esther, and Easter. All the so-called gods, all of them.
None of them are like Jesus.
There is not one that came with the same attributes, with the speaking, with the acts, with the whole, with the person. Nothing is like this in history. Nothing.
Okay, but for me, it doesn't really prove anything.
But no, I'm just answering this guy.
Maybe, okay, fair enough. But we're all unique, you know what I mean? We're all speak and act in a different way. So.
Yes, but you wouldn't claim that you're the son of God, would you?
No.
Why not?
Not in the way that you think it. Maybe I have my own idea about spirituality.
Tell us, what is your idea about spirituality?
Well, it's not it's not actualized.
Is this subjective only to you, or is it?
Well, it's going to be pretty difficult for anybody to understand. For me, it's an active process. Like I said, as a skeptic, when people tell me that they haven't, I'm not one to attack your beliefs. That's not my chat, right? But
we've been under the cook for 2,000 years now, so
right.
It's okay.
So, what I think is that most people have to discover spirituality. I would say it's better if you try and investigate the nature of reality by yourself. Well, that's the question. By thinking, by pondering, by traveling the world, by meeting people.
That's just philosophy.
Well,
what's the distinction between what you're saying in philosophy?
Maybe nothing. But it's to try and understand.
How many
life.
philosophies do we have in this world now?
Not what I mean. Christianity, does it want to understand the world? Is it trying to explain the world?
How many philosophies do you think exist right now in the world?
Well, many.
Millions?
Many.
Millions? I would agree, millions. So I'm saying, where does yours fit in with all these millions? And more importantly, I suspect that you would also even borrow some of your spirituality from what others have already come about with.
Possibly.
Because human beings, we always borrow from others. Our philosophies, our scholarly content, we borrow from other people's books. We borrow from other people's ideas. This is the way we so-called evolve, so supposedly. This is why Christianity stands alone in this aspect, in this respect.
Why? It seems the same as any other belief system.
But I've just told you, there is nothing like the person of Jesus Christ. There is nothing before him. In mythology, in history, nothing like this. So when I say to you that there is no ancient God who came and said, I will die for the whole world. There is no God who said, I'm the light of this world.
Right.
There is no God who says, I have a father in heaven.
I understand, but imagine this guy starts saying that.
But that's hypothetical. We're losing historical.
You could do it yourself. You could tell me those words and say it's from you. It doesn't prove it to be the case. I don't understand the crux of the argument.
If you basically use yourself, right, your subjective experience, and you say that, yes, you have some kind of spirituality, no one is going to argue with you. We might say he's this, he's that, But we're not going to argue because it's your own subjective. That's what the world is.
That's the best way.
But here's the point. Look at the world you live in today.
I look at my own actions.
No, but you live in a world of 7-point-something billion people. Africa, Asia, look at the whole world today. Look at what we have as a result of so-called philosophies. Look at the wars, the diseases, the plagues. Look at the...
Part of being human.
No, it's not part of being human.
No?
No.
I think so.
How can it be part of you? What makes people have wars and at the same time build hospitals?
Yeah, easy. You look after your own people when you fight the unknown.
People have wars and at the same time they build hospitals. Why?
Well, because our morality works on the basis that it's not applied to everybody equally. You want to help and support the people in your tribe, in your group, in your genetic ancestors, or genetic relatives, sorry. And if you have competing groups around the world, they're not, or on the next village over, they're naturally your enemies.
Why?
Well, I mean, that's what we see in history.
No, it's not.
No? You just told me the world is full of wars and terror.
It is
and violence,
now.
and it wasn't in the past?
Well, the whole world, first of all, the whole world wasn't known in history, right? We hadn't basically gone to every single continent, number one.
Sure, but they have their own recorded history and we can read it.
Well, that, again, you can read it, and you can come to whatever conclusions you want to. But what I'm simply saying is today, the whole world, right, is inhabited. Every continent, country, we know of it.
Yeah.
But we cannot find peace. But there is no peace. There is war. There is everything.
There's always been war.
No, but that's what I'm trying to say, right?
Okay.
I'm asking you, I'm saying, this utopia that you want.
I didn't say anything about utopia. I said it was impossible.
Right, and I was asking you, is there precedent from the past? You said no. So then what makes you think that it's achievable?
I didn't say it was achievable.
No, I'm asking you, what makes you think it's achievable?
It's not.
Then if it's not, then why do you...
Utopia is not achievable because it's...
Then why do you adhere to it?
Do I?
Yeah, you say you're looking for your own... You're saying that every man should think for themselves, every man should have their own spirituality,
yes.
Every man should basically be... And I'm saying to you, if you don't have a precedent where we've all come as one, we're all having peace as a result of that, then what makes you think that this thing is achievable?
I don't really understand your question. Like,
does anybody understand my question?
Okay, well, I don't understand your question, but from my perspective, personally, I don't think...
What are you looking for? What are you looking for? Really?
What am I looking for?
Because I use the word utopia and it's kind of all-inclusive, but what are you looking for? What's your ideal world?
Where people think for themselves.
They do that now.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I'd very much doubt it.
Don't you think for yourself?
I would imagine so, but I'm heavily
influenced. What do you mean you imagine so? You either do or you don't.
Because I'm heavily influenced by the world around me. I can't deny that.
So you think that people thinking for themselves means they're not influenced by...
Not what I mean. You will understand what I mean.
Sure.
What I'm trying to say is that if you live in an environment, well, let's take an example. If you're born into, let's say, a Muslim country, right? Everybody you know is Muslim. Everyone's talking about Islam. You don't know anything different. You're brought up from a young age. You're taught it in school. You're taught it in religious school. Your worldview is Muslim at that point, right? That's what I'm saying. And I would say that if you do that with children especially, as they tend to absorb everything that they're told as a survival mechanism from, I would argue, evolution. You would dispute me, it doesn't matter. You can observe that happening, right? If you teach them about religion, they take it deep into their mind and hold it to be true. And then they grow up and their minds are biased. They're not, I would say at large time, it's very difficult to think for yourself when you have so much influence pushing you in one direction. Maybe I'm a product of the same thing, but that's what I'm talking about. No.
No, I mean your parents?
No, none.
So, do you think that everybody who comes from a religious background has these subjective biases?
Everybody has biases, and I'm not holding it against religious people or broad. I'm not holding it against
religious people become atheists too, right?
I know, but everyone has that bias. So what I'm trying to tell you is that how much people are thinking for themselves and how much is ideas that they've been told are correct is highly there, it's right up there.
On the one hand, I would also say that's also very human.
But you were telling me that human nature is not human nature. I'm talking about war and conflict.
I think I was dealing with something very specific.
Okay.
All I'm simply saying is it's very human for us to grow up in a particular environment and leave that environment holding on to the things that we've been taught.
Yeah, right.
It's very human.
That's part of our development.
Right? It's in our DNA to hold on to things that we know or we think we know. This is who we are.
Yeah.
So that's normal.
Right. So I would say that most people are not thinking truly for themselves. They're not questioning their dogmas.
So you're looking for somebody in this world who's not influenced at all.
No. I'm saying it would be a better place if people question what they're told.
So philosophers question what they're told. So they critique. It's called critique, right? Back and forth,
Yeah.
right? Christians critique and question some of the things that they've been told.
Good.
Right? So for instance, today we no longer believe in purgatory, right? We no longer believe that simply in the doctrine that Jesus Christ is not God.
Right.
We question.
Yep.
We go on. We build.
Yeah, good.
That's just part of being human.
Okay, that's a good thing.
It's a normal thing.
Right. So,
But it sounds to me that you want to do the approach of no man's an island approach. That you want to be your own individual, standing, right, without leaning or borrowing on anybody's ideology, and yet still somehow being a full-grown man thinking for yourself. And I'm simply saying that that's not what it means to be human being.
what does it mean then?
Well, human beings, right, we are like bees. The goal is honey, but the only way we produce honey is by us in a corporate way, right? We all have to function together in order to produce something sweet, in order to produce something corporate.
What do you mean? Like production of society?
I'm simply saying that we are corporate. Our genes, who we are, human beings, we are more corporate than we are individual.
We're collective.
Yes.
Yeah, we are meant
We
to be
can be
collective.
individual. We can be individual.
yeah.
But to be individualistic, which is what you're suggesting, which is basically think for yourself, have no kind of outward influences.
No, I didn't say that. But think for yourself for sure.
But
No,
we do that now.
okay.
Human beings do that now. Sorry, you guys think for yourselves, right? Hopefully you guys think for yourselves. Nobody, I mean, you have bias, but nonetheless you still think for yourself. It's the same with everybody else, right?
I'm not. I'm pretty sure you do understand what I'm talking about. Where
honestly,
I'm coming from.
honestly,
No,
I don't try to deceive you or anything. I'm just going by what you're saying. I'm just formulating the argument according to what you say. But maybe you're trying to suggest something else.
No, I'm saying that it seems pretty evident to me that if you educate children to only think in one way and to think that another idea is wrong or evil or bad or sinful, that's going to really powerfully affect their intellectual development. I think that's pretty clear.
Okay, so has anybody heard of Bart Ehrman? Bart Ehrman is a textual theologian. That is, he looks into the textual criticism.
Right.
Now, him from a child all the way, he was a believer. And then at some point, he says he's no longer going to believe. And now he's an opposer. He opposes the Bible. He has thrown out everything, right? He now opposes the Bible. He opposes what the Bible says. He opposes God. He says that basically because the Bible was not divinely preserved, therefore it wasn't divinely given. So that kind of like shows you that from a child, they do change.
No, because is that? Would you tell me? Is that
And he's not an isolated
exception or the rule?
case. He's not an isolated case. You can go to India and you have many people who are born into a caste system, right? But the moment they leave India and they come to US or they go to UK or anywhere in Europe or even Africa, right? How many Indians went to what do you call it?
This is your Trinitarian God. This is it. Your Trinitarian God.
And when they went to Uganda, they started a whole new environment, a whole new living. The caste system was no longer existent among these Indians. So again, they grew up with something. It was as children, they brought this idea across, but it just couldn't be sustained in their present environment.
Okay, yeah, because maybe they adapt to their environment, which is a good thing.
So it happens again and again in human beings, right? They don't grow up with this systematic view and continue with it. They change.
Some of them do.
A lot of them do.
I would argue most don't. But maybe that's not a bad thing, maybe it is. It depends on what we're talking about.
If you're Muslim, I would say leaving Islam is a wonderful good thing.
Why?
Why? There's too much content.
Oh, tell me, man.
There's
Tell
too
me.
much content.
Well, it's a powerful statement, and many people will maybe take offense to that. So let's
Whether
go.
they take offense or not, irrespective to me. The point I'm trying to make to you is that, for me personally, my family, some of my family are Islamic. But they began to read and study. And the more they read and they studied, the more they began to step apart and step back. Because they found that what they're reading, it violates my dad. My dad just couldn't, Because he realized some of the stuff he's reading in this, it just doesn't match who he is in his humanity.
Right. Could you give me an example?
Some of the things he was reading?
Yes.
So, for instance, my dad used to believe in things like, I'll give you a classic. He believed that Jesus Christ was crucified. It was just a normal historical concept. Even as a Muslim, he had this view. But then, the more he read his Quran, the Quran says that Jesus Christ was not crucified. And this for him, see, because my dad is a historian, and when he began to read into it, he was like, what is this? And for many years, he couldn't leave his religion because it was part and parcel of who he is, right? His family members, they couldn't leave because it's part and parcel of who they are.
Right.
But gradually, because it's his job to be a historian, and he's reading history, and he's saying that, whoa. So he had to take a step back for a couple of years, and eventually he made the conclusion that, you know what, this book is not for me.
Right, okay.
So the Quran contradicts the Bible in many ways. If you've heard of things called historical anachronisms, look into that again. So many, the Quran borrows stories, borrows places, borrows persons.
I've heard of this, yeah.
Right. And it gives you this Islamic twist and says, aha, here you go. And you're like...
But what you said was that you would say it was a good thing if somebody left Islam. Why though? Just because of it's inaccurate?
If you,
I'm asking you for evidence. I'm not
sure.
saying you're wrong.
JFK was shot, right?
Yes.
Abraham Lincoln was shot, right? These are historical events. If you go around saying there's no such thing that JFK was shot, that Abraham Lincoln was not shot, we would look at you with a massive amount of skepticism, like, what are you talking about? Because that's not even historical.
Right.
So when you have a group of religious people that go around and say that this thing did not historically happen, then you begin to say, well, whoa, there's something wrong here. There's something fundamentally wrong here.
Right.
Right?
Okay.
Because it's like me saying that, I mean, there's other examples of this.
Well, what about? I mean, well, what I'd be interested in talking about is a wee bit more in detail. There is it only can. I'm not one to put words in your mouth, but does it only concern you that it's maybe some things in its history are inaccurate? What about its morality? What about its teachings? You don't
well,
like
again, when I look at Muhammad's ethics and I look at Muhammad's morality, I cannot compare Muhammad to any prophet in the Bible. He stands alone. It's like having a brick wall made of gold, and in the middle of it you have one made of wood, and it's painted white. It just wouldn't stand in the same thing. When you compare, and this is what I say, all you need to do is compare and contrast Muhammad with any biblical prophet, and you just realize he stands alone. It's just impossible to put him in the same frame. Right, in the same paradigm as prophets.
Yeah, okay.
Right, it's impossible. So the God of the Bible, of the Old Testament, New Testament, he defines what a prophet is because he gives the prophets. Right, he's the one that gives. He calls what a prophet is, and he says what a prophet is not.
Right.
So when you have a man from Arabia 700 years after the Bible has been canonized for 300 years, Jesus Christ has now been. Christians have been persecuted for 300 to 400 years in the Roman Empire by the Byzantine Empire. This man comes along 700 years after the fact, and some of the things he begins to say are contradictory, not just to history, but to the faith of Jesus. You're like, whoa, what is this? Instead of then you ask the adherents. I say, listen, did Muhammad ever make a trip to Israel? No, he didn't. Could he speak Hebrew or Aramaic or any other Semitic language? No, he couldn't. Then how did he come to these conclusions? Apparently an angel spoke to him. Was there any witnesses of this angel? No, there were no witnesses of this angel.
Have there ever been though? You know what I mean? It's more like something you hear in your head, it seems, which concerns me. But
well, when we're talking about angels, you look at the way Muhammad has this interaction with an angel. Again, it's fundamentally different than the way Jews in the past or Christians in the future have relations with angels.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's fundamentally different.
It was like terror and fear.
He grabbed him by the throat, up a wall, says read 3 times. Muhammad comes out the cave, he's in fear and trembling. He runs outside. His wife is the one who makes the suggestion, go to a man, a Christian, a Nestorian by the way, and study what Nestorianism. But he goes to this man, and this man is the one that makes the suggestion, Muhammad, he makes his account, look, this is what happened to me, blah, blah, blah. Then the Christian says, yeah, I suspect you just met Jibril, the angel.
Right.
Now, from that point on, Muhammad makes the assumption that, yeah, I met Gabriel. But the angel never gave a salutation to him, apparently. The angel never introduces itself. It never makes a scene. And this is why I say it's fundamentally different from any other, because in the past, when an angel, for instance, appears to Daniel the prophet, or Zechariah, or Mary, the interaction is fantastically different. So you automatically realize that whatever happened here.
So you believe in angels, right?
Yes, sir.
Do they have effects in the modern world? Do they interact? Do they
will.
Do they intervene?
They will, and yeah, they do. So the Greek word for know is both ginosko and oida. There is both the objective knowing and then there's a subjective knowing, experiential. So for instance, if I have an apple and I say, how do you know this apple? You can't look at the smell and the shape and the colors and you can say you know it. True. But the other way is you take a bite, then you subjectively know it. With angels, it's in the same principle, right? You have to have a subjective experience. So there are millions of people on this planet who've had some experience of some of the angelic host. Some is true, some is false. We can only go by what they say, but what they say has to be used. But they have to use fit what they're saying within the framework of the Bible.
Right.
If it doesn't fit in that framework, then we know that something else is going on, like Muhammad.
Even if it does fit in that framework, how do you know they're telling the truth?
We don't. But they wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I try to use, like, this is the principle of embarrassment, right? So, for instance, if my best friend came to me and said, "Hey, Harry, I just had an experience with an angel," and I would say to him, "Well, okay. If my worst enemy came to me and said, everything that you said is true because I've had an experience with an angel," it's more than likely I'm believing him because he's my worst enemy. He's hated, but now by his own admission, he's now believing because of certain experience.
This dog, man.
Yeah, that's.
He comes every time and sits and barks all the time.
God in Christ!
Soko Films, this is the main man.
Someone.
Thank you, man. Buddy, I think we had a good discussion. Hopefully we learned something from both.
Christ Jesus!